March 2022, traveling 1,700 miles from Yuma, Arizona to Gulfport, Mississippi.
Hi, this is Janet, and I'm Sly. Back in 2016, we both decided it was time to stop working, buy an RV, and start traveling the country and the world. And once the RV was pretty much the way we wanted it, we started our travels, and we've been doing it ever since. So join us as we explore this country and the world, and maybe we can even meet up with some of you along the way.
Janet and I decided to have one last drink in Yuma before we start the first leg of our trip, which will take us to Benson, Arizona. We connect the Jeep early in the morning, even before the sun came up, because we need to get to Benson before it gets to be too late in the day. So we were able to hit the road and start driving just about at the same time as we started seeing a little daylight up east ahead of us. It wasn't long before the sun came up, and we were making good progress along our about 300-mile drive that we want to do today. The last time we stopped for gas was at Cochise, Arizona, and since then, we drove from Cochise all the way up to Las Vegas, all the way back down to Yuma, so it's about time that we get some more gas in the old tank. We decided to fill up with gas just on the other side of Tucson and about 30 miles or so before the RV park. That way, we'll have a full tank of gas as we park, and when it's time to move on to our next stop, we don't have to worry about gas until we're almost at our next destination. I've always preferred to go into an RV park with a full tank of gas, because the same tank that runs my engine also runs my generator. And that way, if the RV park loses power, I don't have to worry about powering up the generator and running out of gas. So, if I can do it, I always fill up before I get to an RV park. We are staying at the CT RV Resort in Benson, Arizona. Now this is a really nice RV park, and we intend to stay here for only 2 nights. We want to stay here for 2 nights because we have plans while we're here. Our first stop is the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona. So I've been here, but it was a long time ago. But Janet has never been here, so there's no way we can go by this place and not stop for at least a little visit. That's one of the reasons why we decided to spend 2 nights here. It's also the reason we left so early out of Yuma. We wanted to get here early enough to have the afternoon and explore Tombstone. Our first stop was at a little theater that claimed to do somewhat historic representations of what it was like back here back in the day.
Well, it would behoove the man to find himself a new form of entertainment, because obviously this one is not his forte.
What would you suggest? Maybe he take up knitting or something?
That'd be a safer hobby.
Well, I don't know how accurate that was, but we enjoyed it, and afterwards we decided it was time to have a drink at one of the many bars in this town. After that, we explored the town a little bit more, went to a wine tasting, that was pretty good, and then decided it was time to have a little lunch before we headed on back. The food was good, and it even came with entertainment. So, don't get me wrong here. We enjoyed our stop in Tombstone, but the town has changed, and right now it's more of a tourist trap where they nickel and dime you to death. Still worth seeing, but be careful. And after spending the afternoon in Tombstone, it was time to call it a day and drive on home into that sunset. And the next morning, we set off to Tucson to visit our good friends Rick and Colleen. Rick and Colleen took us on a tour of the Tucson area. This tour took us up to Tucson Mountain Park and to the Saguaro National Park. Now, Janet and I have spent a bit of time out here in the West, but we have never come across this many saguaros all in one place. So seeing this forest of saguaro, along with a bunch of other cactuses and plants, was really interesting to us. After the parks, we made one last stop at San Xavier Mission. After exploring this 220-year-old mission, we went back to their place, fed some chickens, said our goodbyes because we had more friends to see. As it turned out, Melanie and Terry were also passing through Tucson in their RV. It was great to see them again and just catch up on what's been happening with all of us as we travel across this country in our RVs. The next morning, bright and early, starts day 2 of our travel towards Gulfport, Mississippi. Today, we are trying to make it to Van Horn, Texas. The trip to Van Horn, Texas is going to be about 400 miles. For me, that means 2 stops at a rest stop and 1 stop at a gas station to fill up the old tank. I don't really get tired driving the RV. I can keep going for a very long time, so the rest stops are barely 5-10 minutes long. So it doesn't take us all that long to make it across Arizona and get right into New Mexico. As we got near Las Cruces, we looked up and saw this giant Roadrunner standing up there. It's made out of scrap metal found at a local garbage dump. And before you know it, we were in Texas again, and Texas is a long way across. This is going to be about 3 days of our trip all by itself. Now that we're in Texas, it's time to stop for the night because we're almost in Van Horn. And the pilot station where we intend to fill up is just about 2 miles away from the RV park. And as usual, I like to fill up and go into the park with a full tank. This gas stop turned out to be really nice. We did about 400 miles and that cost us about 50 gallons in gas, which worked out to be about $250. It was nice because we made almost 8 miles to the gallon, and that's really good for my rig that normally makes 6.5. And so, with a full tank of gas ready for tomorrow, we make the last 2 miles to the Van Horn RV Park. There is nothing special about the Van Horn RV Park. It has nice level lots and it has power, water, and sewer, although the spots are dirt instead of concrete. So, nothing special, but it happened to be at the exact right place for our travel plans, and that's why we stopped here. The spots were about 65 feet long, and that meant I did not have to disconnect my Jeep. So tomorrow morning, it's just get up and drive away. And that's exactly what we did. When the sun came up, we hit the road because our destination today is Bornay, Texas, which is just outside of San Antonio. This leg of the trip is going to be about 400 miles. It's one of the longer legs that we're doing to get back to Gulfport. You know, the thing with getting up early with the sun and driving east is you're driving into the sun pretty much all day long. That can be a little unpleasant at times. As usual, the first stop is a rest stop, and then we continue because it's time to fill up with gas yet again. This gas stop is at Junction, so it's about 80 miles short of our destination. So we've done about 330 miles since we filled up last. We put in about 40 gallons of gas and it cost us $203. We filled up and 80 miles later we were pulling into the RV park where we were going to spend one more night. This time the name of the park was the Alamo Fiesta RV Park. The original plan? Get here, rest, go to sleep, and get up. But that all changed. Because Janet's sister Jennifer and her boyfriend Ron happened to live in San Antonio and were able to make some time to come on out and visit us. We had a great time catching up with them, but it was also a long night, especially considering the kind of trip we have to do the next day. But family time is important, and the next day we got up bright and early and hit the road again.
And the target for today is Vidor, Texas, about 320 miles or so away. So we did stay up kinda late last night, and well, maybe we did have 1 or 2 bourbons, or maybe even 3. Either way, that does not excuse us from getting up bright and early and hitting the road. Of course, that meant hitting San Antonio just as the morning rush hour is starting. Boy, was that a lot of fun. But we got through San Antonio and soon we were in Houston making our way to Vidor. We pulled off at a rest stop about 40 miles or so short of the RV park because something back there did not feel exactly right. Yep, that could be the problem I was feeling. It seems that the weld on the tow hitch failed, and it was time to do a little bit of repair and redecoration. We moved the luggage carrier to the back of the Jeep, threw the stuff into the car, hooked up the Jeep to the RV, and left about 5 feet shorter than we started. From there, we got back on the road, and it was a short drive to our destination, which was the last RV park that we had to stay in Texas, and this was Boomtown RV Resort. I can't complain about the view out the windshield of the RV for our last night in Texas. It is by far the prettiest one we've had so far, but I am looking forward to tomorrow, getting back on the road, and getting out of Texas, finally. So, bright and early in the morning, it's time to leave the old RV park and start on the last leg of our trip that'll take us into Gulfport, Mississippi. This last leg is one of our shorter legs. It's only 310 miles to get to the RV park. But because yesterday we did no gas stops at all, we have to make up for today by stopping for gas twice. Altogether, today we spent $440 on gasoline for ye old RV. Expensive gas aside, it's nice to be back on the east side of the country. I miss seeing tall trees and green. And so, as we pull into the CB base at Gulfport, Mississippi, I discover that I don't miss the browns of the West so much and am thoroughly enjoying the greens of this side of the country. The RV park here on the CB base is nice. We've been here before. What I really like about it is it's really close to the gate, so it's easy in, easy out. The concrete pads are about as level as you can get, and the water, power, and sewer are also great. And the last upside? Well, it's only about 15 minutes to the beach and 15 minutes to Gulfport, so plenty of things to do nearby. So, we're now in Gulfport. It's been 1,700 miles and 6 days since we started this trip back in Yuma. We made 6 gas stops that altogether cost us almost $1,400. Now that wasn't fun. But now that we're here, the RV will travel less, so gas expenses for the rest of the year, not so much. And that leaves us a little bit more money on just exploring and having fun. And it's about time we start that up again. The trip across the country was long and somewhat tiring. But we saw friends and family along the way, so it was still a lot of fun to see them. As usual, if you look down in the description below here, you'll find a link to all the different RV parks that we stayed at across the country. We did about 300 to 400 miles a day, so if you intend to make this trip, it might make your planning a little bit easier.
This trip across the country had its challenges, but Janet and I still enjoyed the trip, and we both hope that you enjoyed traveling with us. And now we're in Gulfport, Mississippi, and we hope that you'll continue to join us as we explore this stop.